Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. I'm your host, Sara Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you're notified every week with my new podcast on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you haven't already, join my free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. No censorship, and it's free. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your journey in addition to truly taking control of your health. My goal is to reach everyone on earth with eyes to see and ears to hear my message of healing. I can't do it alone, so help me with that goal. Share this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help. And I'm so excited about this topic today. We are talking about the empowerment solution, unlocking your full potential with the subconscious mind. Mental health is physical health, everybody. And we've got Dr. Friedemann Schaub on. He's a physician, researcher, and personal development coach. I have been on his show. I love him, and I love what all he's about. He's the author of the award-winning book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution. Welcome. How are you today?
Very well. So excited to be on your show.
This is a topic that is just blowing up, just mental health in general, because of all that's going on in the world, right? The food degradation is causing anxiety and depression, the global fear, the amount of stressors, the financial issues going on. I mean, you stack them one on top of another. And I honestly don't know very many people that don't suffer with some sort of mental issues. So I'm super excited to get into the mind and how to take control back. So where do we start? Why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and why you changed from being a physician to a molecular biologist?
Well, that was the first step. I was in medicine. I was actually specializing in cardiology, and cardiology, where I was, which was a university hospital, also required to do 2 years of basic research in a research lab. And I happened to go to Seattle, Washington, at the University of Washington, and it really opened my eyes. You know, in medicine, you're kind of so focused only on what's wrong with a person and what the doctors are here for to fix. And in really basic research, molecular biology especially, you look at all the magic that happens in each and every one of our cells every day and how the cells are capable and adaptable. And I was just blown away. I mean, I remembered a little bit from medical student times, but not in that depth. So I got really into it, and I was interested in finding out more about what is our capacity to heal versus what do we need from the outside to heal. And from that, I realized that, I don't want to just work on little cells and rats, unfortunately. I actually want to work on people. I want to help people to empower themselves, to heal themselves with the innate power that's already inside of us. And one thing that I always thought about cardiology in particular, how many stressed and anxious people came to us, and no one ever took care of their mental health. It was all about, we're going to fix the symptoms and we're going to give you a nice little prescription. And well, lo and behold, they came back after 6 months, and you wonder, what didn't we see? What did we overlook? And I felt that so many of the patients were giving their power to the doctors. They come in and feel kind of intimidated and, of course, also hopeful, but there is no sense of empowerment or self-responsibility. And that's all what I really wanted to turn around. And and help people to address their physical well-being at the root and help them to accelerate their physical being also by addressing stress, anxiety, and all those things we know are really also contributing majorly to our health and to illness.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the Western medical system is designed um, to just give medication for symptoms. And I had a loved one the other day say, Sarah, but I have to do what my doctor says. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. You are in control of your body. You are paying your doctor for advice, right? And that's something that people really need to. That's step one, to take their power back, right? To know that they have an option. But the other thing is too, is most people who are suffering from anxiety and depression, they are not getting tested for thyroid, for instance. And a lot of times their hypothyroidism and their low metabolism and hypothyroid symptoms are causing mental fog and depression or anxiety. And so there's a lot to the story here that people need to understand. And I just posted actually choose faith over fear, because you will manifest whatever you're thinking about, whether it's what you have faith in or what you're fearing. And this goes back to, what are we focused on to take control of the mind, right? So I I love that you talk about the survival mode. um, Physically, I've talked about it as well, as where when the body is in survival mode, when it thinks it's being threatened, it will slow down the metabolism, store body fat, and go through all of these physical mechanisms because it doesn't know what's going to happen next. What happens to the mind when you live in survival mode?
Well, the survival mode that I'm talking about is the survival mode that is ultimately what so many of us are living in, even though we have enough to eat, we may be able to pay rent, but it's a survival mode of somehow keeping ourselves safe in certain patterns, safe from rejection and criticism, safe from another trauma if we had gone through trauma, safe from failure, safe from disappointment, safe from feeling that you don't belong. These are really like general daily survival modes that we are in that we don't even notice. We take it for granted. When we think about survival, we think really the nuts and bolts. Well, you're almost dying. So, yes, there is a survival instinct kicking in. But what about the slow death of survival, where we really just going through life, making it through another day, feeling like we dodged another bullet, and we really don't thrive. We don't enjoy life, and we are aging faster. We are getting faster ill, and certainly those survival patterns are also one of the major reasons why people are stuck in fear and anxiety. It's like a vicious cycle. If you feel already unsafe in the world, and then you're focusing on how can I make it through, then your whole focus is either on avoiding danger, or the other pattern is to please others, to be acceptable. And those patterns are repeating themselves. And since you're only focusing on the outside and not really knowing who you are and what's good for you and what's really your direction and your purpose, you become more and more disconnected from yourself. And the disconnection from yourself is one of those things that makes the mind absolutely scared. It's like, you're basically without a home, without a safety net, you're relying only on others. That is a very, very scary place. It's like a child that got kicked out of its house and has nowhere to go. And that's the chronic stress so many of us are in.
So you're talking about the two types of coping mechanisms. Is that what you would call it? Would be the people pleaser and the avoider. And you're just essentially isolating. It's so funny because I was actually tagged as a people pleaser when I was growing up, and then all of a sudden I decided to have a voice and have an opinion, and a lot of people in my life didn't like it. Right?
That's common, yes.
So let's talk about the avoider and the pleaser patterns.
Well, I do this since 20 years, helping people to overcome fear and anxiety, depression without medication and empower themselves. And what I'm working with is not just the intellectual part of the mind. I'm also working with the subconscious mind, where these patterns are really anchored, where we have, the imprints early on that make us feel not good enough or not safe in the world. And we can, so many people say, I have been 10 years in therapy. I talked about everything. Logically, I understand it, but I don't feel it. I don't feel it in my body. I don't act accordingly. I have a feeling there's still something holding me back. And that's where the subconscious comes in, because we cannot win the fight against the subconscious if the subconscious thinks you're not safe. It will just try anything it can to keep you safe. And so those avoider patterns are the pattern where you are in victim mode. That's number one, where basically the past is your reference sheet. You look back and say, well, I got betrayed, I got hurt, I got abused, and it's probably going to happen again. So I just going to live constantly in this looking over my shoulder, being vigilant, but also not really willing to grow out of it. It's safer to stay in that victim place because it feels like, well, at least now I'm still alive and I'm not hurt. If I don't trust anyone, if I don't lean myself out, I am okay. Now, it's a very self destructive place. And if you know the person who has been a victim, then you also know sometimes they victimize themselves. Sometimes they become their own perpetrator by either blaming themselves for what happened or feeling a lot of guilt or shame, and they're rejecting often also the help from others and see them as the perpetrator. So it's a very, very sticky place, and it's certainly not a healthy place to be in. And the second avoider is then the invisible pattern where you are hiding out. And we all know people like that. And maybe you are one of those who just doesn't want to have a voice, doesn't want to be seen, doesn't want to necessarily, have a bigger life, just plays it very predictable and safe, wears the same clothes, doesn't really feel like that there is a lot outside that comfort zone that, needs to be discovered. And life becomes smaller and smaller. And that is certainly something where, you don't think you're in a survival mode because you're totally fine with Netflixing therapy where you just, go through your routines. But in the end, you're only living for that comfort. You're not living your natural inclination to expand. Like everything in nature is about expanding and expressing yourself. And then the third the third avoider pattern is the procrastinator pattern. And many people say, well, procrastinators are just lazy. But the fact is that some of the busiest people are the biggest procrastinators. And what they procrastinate around is everything that they feel afraid of or they feel discomfort around. So, for example, people that are super driven and high achievers, they usually don't take care of themselves. They often have something, well, I didn't have time for my checkup, or I don't want to take my vitamins. I have to go to an early meeting. And that is procrastination. Now, there are, of course, the other procrastinators also that say, oh, I'm going to never do my laundry or never pay my bills. But again, it's about avoiding failure, avoiding discomfort, and that form of avoiding that. I don't want to see what I cannot really control or that may have a bad outcome. That is also something that is a survival pattern. It works for a while until it doesn't.
It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy because then they don't succeed and then they can look back on their history and say, well, I'm not one to succeed. I'm one to procrastinate. I'm one to, stay home. I'm not a go-getter. And so then they just don't, and they don't get out of their own way. It's so interesting because over the last 4 years with the pandemic, I feel like more and more people are just okay being isolated. And oh, yeah, ever since the pandemic, I don't like to go out anymore. I don't like to leave my house. I'm good just watching movies on TV. Or and the amount of social media, the amount of porn, the amount of gambling, all of these other addictions have taken over their minds. And that probably, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, are those addictions a way of feeling safe?
Well, they're certainly giving some kind of a gratification. It's a wonderful distraction. Some ways it's a, self-therapy, because if you get these little dopamine hits and some form of excitement or win, your suffering is not as hard, as painful. And now it's an interesting thing about the isolation. We can say this is wrong, that people are isolating, but we can also say, well, maybe the problem is that going out feels like a huge stressor, because it was for people often a huge stressor to go out and then have to do something amazing that they later on can post about, or this pressure to always be up and being in a good mood and have energy. And so when I talk to people that were in that isolation place, they said, it's such a relief. I don't have to do this anymore. It's now acceptable to not have to perform. So we also have to ask ourselves, can we go out and feel actually that it's enjoyable and that it's relaxing and that socializing and connecting is actually meaningful? And it's not just about comparing and contrasting with others. So we have, as a society, also to really wonder, can we create meaningful relationships again? Because whatever happens with social media friends, that's not meaningful. That's not real. That's, when I see young people say, hey, I talked to my friend. I said, did you actually talk to your friend, or did you text your friend? Very, very different. 70% of communication is nonverbal. So if you only text, you only get 30% of the nuances across, and you don't feel the connection, you don't feel the closeness, you don't understand the person just based on words, or even worse, emojis. So we have to really think about, how can that be a sign, this isolation, that we have to rethink how we connect.
It's a whole new world that we're navigating with social media and our poor children. I mean, I'm a mom of three, and I can tell you all three of my children have suffered from some sort of anxiety or depression at some stage in their life, and they're not wired to be depressed or anxious. You would never have thought that those three kids would have been. And I remember talking to one of the elementary school children teachers, saying that it was 2 years ago. So after the pandemic, and when the kids were back in school, 24 out of 25 of her children in fourth grade were on some sort of medication for anxiety, depression, or ADHD. That's 24 out of 20.
Terrible.
And
Absolutely terrible.
we're in an affluent neighborhood, so there's no stressors more than normal. So it's really unfortunate, and unfortunately, people don't feel the power. So I want to get back into the subconscious mind, because we can talk about what we want to do. Yes, we want to take control back. Yes, we want to get rid of our anxiety. Yes, I want to stop being depressed. But that's the conscious mind. How do we tap into the subconscious mind, and what is it?
Well, the subconscious mind is basically the most important part of our existence, I think. I mean, okay, there is probably a soul or a higher consciousness that, I believe, as someone who has some spiritual inclination, is maybe the core of who we are. But the subconscious is basically that part of our mind that takes care of 80% of our daily activities. And that is, for example, our physical well-being. That's not the conscious mind that makes the breathing. It's not the conscious mind that, when we are saying, let's lift the arm, is changing, flexion and extension of these countless muscles. It's all subconsciously regulated, which is why the subconscious does also these repetitive motions, like playing piano or doing sports. It's all ingrained in the subconscious. We don't have to, we cannot consciously control that. And the subconscious is also responsible for emotions, which is why our emotions don't often make sense. You go on your second date, the first one was awesome. And the second date, oh my God, you're sweating bullets. All of a sudden, you feel like tongue-tied. Oh, can I be as funny as before? And what if she doesn't like me? And look, she looks at her phone. That means like I'm not really interesting enough. And the subconscious plays all those tricks when it actually is supposed to support you. So the subconscious does those, emotional outbursts, sometimes at the most inopportune moments. Why? And then the subconscious is also responsible for memories. Most of our memories are not conscious, they're bubbling up. I mean, I have just to smell cigar and I'm thinking about my grandfather who I dearly loved, but I don't think about him at all during the day. But when that smell comes, boom, the memory is there. And then the subconscious is also doing all those, moral values and belief systems and everything that kind of is the structure of our world, all anchored in the subconscious mind, which is why people that are really successful, but may have a subconscious belief that the shoe gonna drop, they never feel really safe. They always look, across, themselves and wonder, when does it happen? When will I, lose everything again? And it's just because the subconscious has not let go of this. And the reason for all of this, you may think like, oh, the subconscious is kind of a saboteur. No, it creates all these bad things, but it has really only two MOs, two notions for us. One is to keep us safe, and the other one is to help us thrive and be happy. But if safety is not guaranteed, if it's programmed to rather look for survival than for thrival, it will always just go towards more stress, anxiety, and all the things that it believes keep you on your toes and keep you safe. And that's where, the past plays such an important role. Because when we are in the past, we're told something like, the world is not a safe place, or, oh, money doesn't grow on trees, or you are really not fitting in, you're an oddball. If these are early messages and they haven't changed, you will fall into these survival patterns. You will feel like you don't belong, or you feel like that you have to be a chameleon, which is a pleaser pattern where you're just like blending in, and or you will feel that you have to please everybody else and never look after yourself because the caretaker role is the only way for you to get a little affirmation and worthiness. So those patterns are starting early. And unless we are consciously working with the subconscious to change those patterns, they will just always feel like somehow sabotaging our happiness when in fact they only try for us to be safe.
So the goal is for us to feel safe. So how then? Okay, first I want to talk, clarify the three patterns of the people pleaser, because I'm really curious. We talked about the three patterns of the avoider, but what are the three patterns of the people pleaser?
So the first one is the chameleon. So that's more the person who doesn't really want to be visible for who they are. They don't even ask who they are, but they also don't want to be unnoticed because that's a very important for them to belong. And so they basically change their opinions, their appearance, and whatever is necessary for them to fit in. And that is really a lot of our younger generation. They are looking at what gives me the most likes, what gives me the most followers, what's the trend. And in the extreme, the people that do all these online challenges just to get some attention, just to be someone, this idea of I have to stand out to not be forgotten and to belong. Some people, lost their lives because of this. And so it's a very serious challenge. And same thing with the fear of missing out. It's a chameleon challenge because you don't even ask yourself, what do I want? Do I really feel like going out tonight? Is that really where I want to be? Somewhere in Greece? But you see it on social media and then you think, oh my God, they have so much fun and my life is so boring and I'm such a loser. And And again, you haven't really wondered yet what's important to you. And that's a really, really important subject to address. And the second one is the classic caretaker, people pleaser that you said you were, and that also I was. I was a peacemaker because, my name means man of peace. Friedemann means man of peace. So they already put it on my forehead when I was born. You gotta be the peacemaker of the family. And I certainly was. And then the third one is the lover, which basically is that subset of pleasers that are focusing only on one person. So often codependent relationships, it's like the people that we know that put everything into their romantic relationship. And when that romantic relationship, even an abusive relationship, they're still holding on to it because they think, well, I'm going to make this person change. I can understand. Only I can really help. And then, depending what relationship they're in, they're changing also their interests from, I love to go to the opera to, oh, hunting is the best thing in the world. But it doesn't really reflect on who they are. It reflects only on what their relationship wants them to be. And so the notion of the pleaser is that the only way to feel safe is through others. I need others for that sense of survival. Whereas the avoider is I need to avoid others to be safe. So one is more isolating, the other one is just clinging and needing others, and both create a lot of stress and anxiety because we cannot control the outside world, and we certainly cannot control others to either not hurt us or like us. We can try, but usually it doesn't work.
This is stirring up so many questions because you then say, well, am I not supposed to love someone? Am I not supposed to be pleasing to other people? Well, how do I get along? And for me personally, when I realized that I was a people pleaser, then I swung to the other side, and I said, well, I'm not going to please anybody, and I kind of, it was this the pendulum went to the other side. Do you see that happen when people are trying to grapple with getting their power back?
Yeah, and it's sad because, that's a misunderstanding that, well, people pleasing is bad. You shouldn't do it. And it's not true because some people, they just have an inclination to help others or make them feel good or want them to be happy. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just one way that they really, want to express themselves. Now, the difference, though, that's something that's really important. The difference between that survival people pleaser and just being, of support to others is when you are of support to others, because that's your nature. You don't want anything in return. You don't want to thank you. You're not giving more and more beyond your means because it's so important for you to get approval. You're not using other people to make yourself feel better. You are simply so full with, I want to do good in the world, or I want to help this person because I really love that person, but I don't need them to do the same for me. I don't have a you owe me sheet that's getting longer and longer, and my resentment grows over and over again. All the things don't exist. So, but that needs to happen when you have been a people pleaser by first learning to please yourself. You cannot switch to, okay, now I'm just gonna have no expectation because you're lying to yourself. But you have to realize everything that you have done for others, you also deserve. And you have to become better with your boundaries. You have to become better with understanding what your needs are and how to fulfill them. All of those things are described in the book and the empowerment solution because I think so many people have these questions. Now, the concepts are nice, but what do I actually do? And for me, it was important to have clear, hands-on, step-by-step processes where people can see, I can actually do this. I know now how to switch, and I can still remain a good person, but I'm no longer doing this for my own gratification. And the extreme example is someone who actually hurts others by overgiving. And we know this of, let's say parents that are so eager to please their children that they never really challenge them. And so with 35, they are still living in the basement and still getting their underwear washed and all of those things. So yeah, the parent feels good. Oh, my son needs me or my daughter. But in the end, it's still something where you're doing a disservice on your, own need to be wanted or to be needed. And that is where I think we have to realize as people pleasers, we're not just doing good things. We can actually also hurt people.
Yes, and you see it in parenting a lot. I mean, I can tell you, I try to give my kids the tools to learn the lessons. I always tell them that I want them to fail without dying, because with every failure, they're going to learn, right? But they have to fail. I can't save them every time. But I have friends that do everything for their child, and they're exactly what you're talking about. They're grown children that are handicapped because the parents have done everything, and they think they're loving their child, but they're only just taking away the opportunity to grow. And you talk about authenticity, and I feel like this is what we're talking about here is, how do you know what is your authentic self? And not being the people pleaser, or not just giving, or avoiding. What is your authentic self, and how do you discover that?
Well, that's the fun part with the subconscious and the conscious collaboration. So the authentic self has the one component that you can observe. This is kind of how you show up in the world. And there are certain questions you can ask yourself. So what is really important to you, or what were some of the obstacles that you were overcoming in your life, and what qualities came from inside when you had to overcome those qualities, or what do you remember was really, when you were little, the thing that made you stand out for yourself. Were you just creative? Did you create some magical stories? Were you seeing in nature everything as unique? And so discovering more about your expressions and what it really tells you about you kind of feeds back to your inner qualities and your values. But that's like, looking at a diamond and seeing all these different facets. All these qualities are not just one is my authentic self. All together make that authentic you, with all these different ways of showing up in the world. But then there is something deeper. It's like an essence. And in the book, I describe how I met my wife. And one of the things that was so amazing when I met my wife, that we met in a yoga retreat with 1,600 people. And when I saw her the first time, I was locked there. I mean, you can imagine 1,600 people, there's a lot to look at, but I just saw her and I immediately felt like that feels so familiar. And then when we talked, I felt immediately something about her that made me feel I know her. It's like I knew her essence. I didn't know her story. I didn't know anything about her, but I felt an energy of recognition. It's like I felt at home with her. And that just got stronger and stronger. And even though we changed a lot, with our 25 years together now, but even though she changed a lot, I changed a lot, but there is something about this signature self that I can always sense. And I cannot even put it in words, but it's something you feel. And in the book, there is a process that leads you back to your signature self. It's like you're going basically to different stages of rewinding time until you're back to your origin, your essence. And when people do this, also I do this often with my one-on-one clients, it's amazing what they discover. I had one client who was a really brainy financial advisor, and all about numbers, and then he got back to his essence and in touch with it. And he started tearing up because he said, oh my God, there is so much creativity inside of me. I'm an artist. I didn't really know this, but this feels like I'm a source of creativity. And I never really had acknowledged this to myself. And then, from that on, he really changed his job and basically made the creative expression his main focus. So it's like a coming back to yourself, a remembering to yourself. And once you feel your essence, you can always also disconnect from everything that's confusing you, because we are so overwhelmed with all different opinions and voices and distractions, and it's easy to get lost and try to hold on to something outside. And when you know your essence, it just brings you automatically back to yourself. It's like this inner magnet that aligns yourself to who you really are, and it feels amazing.
You got me. I can feel it as you're talking. I can feel it within me just connect. So it's actually very interesting what I just experienced. Back to the subconscious mind. I feel like most people don't even understand how to connect with their own subconscious mind.
But they
So,
do it every day.
right. So, can you describe what just some basic tools on how to connect with your subconscious mind?
The way we all connect to the subconscious mind is watching TV and reading books, because both could not be enjoyed if your subconscious wouldn't be involved. See, the conscious mind would only see the words on a page, or would immediately look at, oh, I know this actor, oh, this is not real, oh, that's only catch up. The conscious mind is more like critical, analytical, wouldn't really enjoy the story. But the subconscious mind puts itself into the story. It's the part where we have imagination, where we visualize from, where we feel from, and all of a sudden you are the hero, and all of a sudden you are in the midst of this adventure, and you really feel it and you sense it and you see it. And that is the power of the subconscious mind. Now, other people's stories, it's nice to live in, but what if you use your subconscious mind to create your own story? We all know how athletes or actors and performers visualize what they're about to do over and over again, and they just have that power of showing up on the stage or on the field and doing exactly what they have been visualizing, because their subconscious knows that's what he or she wants. That's what we're going to do. And that's what we are missing out as, ordinary people, because we're not necessarily having to perform, in front of 50,000 people. We kind of, just feel like, well, that's for them. But you can use the power of working with the subconscious every day. If you have any challenge, if you feel like, today I want to be more brave and speak up, or today I want to be able to say no and really take care of myself. If you would already set this intention in the morning and visualize what this feels like, what this looked like, you look through your own eyes, you see yourself from the outside, you go back and forth. It takes like maybe 90 seconds. You would have your subconscious zoomed in exactly on the path that leads you to that outcome. It's like when we want to buy a house and all of a sudden we see for sale signs everywhere. Or, it happened to me that I was in love with this girl when I was in medical school. She was in Munich. I was in New York City. I saw her everywhere in New York City, at least in 10 different variations. But, it was just my subconscious saying, she must be here. She must be. So that is where the work with the subconscious is really, really powerful. And the subconscious is a simple way to communicate. It's either, it's not either, it's all together. Visualizing, so you have your inner movie screen and you go there. Feeling, so make sure when you see something you want to see that you feel the appropriate feelings with it. Then it's often using the senses. I find it very, very powerful to add a scent to it, even have something that you feel, okay, this is a calming scent like lavender, a lemon scent, maybe more a mint scent, maybe more activating, empowering. So when you visualize, just have the scent with it. And then also what you say to yourself, the sound. So affirmations work only if you really add all those things to it. Otherwise, it's gibberish for the subconscious. It doesn't really matter. You have to see, feel, and have some kind of an energy behind it for the subconscious to really take it all in. And then it does whatever you want it to do.
I started a couple years ago laying in bed right when I wake up and envisioning my day and how I want it to go. And honestly, I had very few bad days because I've already played out the day before I even get out of bed. And I've taught that for my kids and they've taken it on. But I want to go back to your example of reading a book. Um, that it just was an aha moment. My youngest child, when she was in second grade, she couldn't comprehend what she was reading. She would read the words, and she was one of the best spellers in her class. She was top of her class in math, and she's very analytical, so very smart. But she would read the page, and she wasn't comprehending it, and she would get very frustrated with herself. And we got her tested for ADHD and dyslexia, and she had none of that. And I had one person in her life, when you read the book, imagine you're the main character. What is the little girl smelling? What is she doing? How is she feeling? And that was it. And then she took off. She's now in high school, getting straight A's, doing excellent in school. And it wasn't dyslexia, it wasn't a learning disability. It was that she hadn't connected her conscious and subconscious mind when she was actually
Right.
reading the book.
Yes. And maybe she was really all about, I need to spell right, or I need to know how to write this. So her conscious mind was so focused on that task that their subconscious didn't even have a chance to come through it. There must have been maybe a little bit of a pressure that she put on herself that made also, that disconnection happen. But that's a great idea, just to ask for how does the main character feel. And yes, that's what we want to ask ourselves too. If I can be the main character in my life, the leader of my life, how would I show up differently? How would I feel differently? And that's what this empowerment solution book is all about. It gives you a new owner's manual. And many people say, well, I'm only a pleaser, I'm not an avoider. No, not true. I mean, I think I have been working on myself for 30 years, that I probably got somewhere, but trust me, I have all those patterns somewhere inside, or I know when they were there, and it's important to do some cleanup. So we all have also these procrastination or invisibility or avoider patterns inside of us. And it's good just to learn from all of this, because each of them has the key to unlock our authentic leadership. And the keys are as important as a pattern. So the key for the victim to unlock that power, self-responsibility, not any longer feeling the past is determining the future, but really you take responsibility to learn from the past and to learn from whatever happened to you, and to grow from it and step out of this role of this was done to me and I couldn't really change that. And then the key for the invisibility is self-compassion, which is really an important piece, because I think most of us don't really know how to be compassionate to ourselves. We're doing it for others, but with ourselves we have a hard time. And then the key for the procrastinator is self-reliance, which, if you ever have been dealing with lack of confidence, I can really bet that you have been not relying on yourself very much. That means you may have told yourself something and then you haven't followed through, or you may have not really been impeccable with your word, as Don Miguel Ruiz would say in the Four Agreements. So that is an important piece of self-reliance. And then the next in the invisibility, no, the chameleon is self-awareness, just being aware of yourself and not just seeing yourself through other people's eyes. And then there is a self-commitment key for the pleaser, meaning like you are responsible for your resources. And just like we are responsible for how we spend our time and how we spend our money, we are also responsible for our energy. And especially pleasers are giving, 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 and they're often drained. My mom was a pleaser, and And I believe that her pleaser pattern cost her life, because in the end, she was such a pleaser and she was always putting herself last, that there was a sense of bitterness that became stronger and stronger inside of her. And my father, who got ill and she had to take care of, and they didn't always have the best relationship, also prevented her, of course, to have a little fun and meet some friends or travel a little bit. And then she developed gallbladder cancer, which is so often connected to bitterness and anger and resentment that's suppressed, and she died from it. And I think that's just such a powerful example that such a good person had to die so pitifully and painfully. That's really, it feels unjust, but it's also a call to all of us who may have been in the pleaser pattern, that it's important to find balance and to really learn to commit to yourself and commit to your own energy and what feels right to you. And the self-love, of course, is the lover key. And that's something that I really enjoyed writing and exploring, because so many people say, yeah, everyone says I have to love myself, but I don't know how to do it. That's just like a weird concept. And there are steps that actually can help you to learn to love yourself. They're not very hard. They are just different concepts that we have to apply. And all of a sudden, this love is budding. So these keys are then helping you to unlock this empowered leader of your life. And I think that's a new owner's manual that all of us could really strive to, and then together make this world a place where we can feel safe and have greater equality and greater certainty.
I love all of that. And I love your example of your mom, because it brings to the forefront the fact that your physical body and your mental state are so interconnected. You can heal your body through your brain. You can create disease from in your body from the way you're thinking, your anxiety, and all that we're talking about. And so I wanted, before you go, I just wanted to just stress the fact that the food you put in your mouth is going to make things worse or better. And then also to, you can use a couple supplements that will help with anxiety and depression. The acceleradine iodine deficiency is the #1 cause for depression. And it's also the #1 mineral to help with spirituality. It connects your brain to your body. It opens up your pineal gland. I've had people say, oh my gosh, the brain fog's lifted. I feel so much happier. So I'm awake now. And then you can start doing the work with the subconscious mind. And then to pair that with is the Cognoblast, which is a brain enhancement supplement that helps with focus, cognition, mood, ATP production at the cellular level, anxiety, motivation. It will help you get out of your way and do what you're wanting to do. So I just wanted to mention that. And of course, get rid of the processed foods. That stuff is going to cause the depression and anxiety only to get worse. So before we go, Doctor, please tell everyone where they can find you and where they can get you.
Well, you can find me on my website, drfriedemann.com. So make sure that there is an E after the D, Friedemann, 2Ns.com. And also I have a YouTube channel, Dr. Friedemann Shaub, and an Instagram channel, Dr. Friedemann, and so on, the social media stuff. But you can find my Instagram lives there and my podcast as well. It's called Empowerment Solutions. My books are available everywhere where books are available, also through the website, but of course, Barnes & Noble, Amazon. I often also offer a class which is called From Anxiety to Empowerment. It's a 6-step video course that is really for those of you that cannot do the one-on-one coaching that I offer. It's really a great way to start working with your subconscious mind. It's affordable. It gives you a lot of tools and it's guided. So it definitely gives you also this added benefit of not reading a book, but actually being held and supported. And there is a Facebook group that is thriving in that From Anxiety to Empowerment course. So that's something to do. And there's always more to come. So stay tuned and go to my website.
Wonderful. Thank you. You are helping so many people, and this is a service that the numbers are just growing. It truly is a pandemic, the amount of people suffering mentally. So thank you for your work. And thank you, everyone else, for joining us today. If I can help you with health issues, you can contact me directly through the website, sarabantahealth.com. Happy to put together a protocol for you and join the free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. There is no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your journey in addition to taking control of your health. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products across over 100 channels under Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show. And as I mentioned, I cannot do it alone. My goal is to reach everyone on earth with eyes to see and ears to hear my message of healing. So please help me with that goal. Share this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help. And join us every week, Mondays at 2 p.m. Pacific, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific, live on the podcast. And you can find all the supplements at sarabantahealth.com. Use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week.